From the nation's capital, Eye on Washington with Marilee Joyce. A weekly discussion about the federal issues most important to Nevada. And now, from Washington, D.C., here's Marilee Joyce.
Good day to you. I'm Marilee Joyce, and this is Eye on Washington, the only statewide Nevada news program produced in Washington, D.C. Every week, Eye on Washington takes you straight to Capitol Hill for a discussion with Nevada's delegation and other leaders about the federal matters that matter to you. Today's topic, a code of conduct for internet poker. We'll find out about a proposal that calls on operators of online poker to follow the same set of rules followed in brick and mortar casinos. And my very special guest today is Mr. Fahrenkopf, the president and CEO of the American Gaming Association. And thanks for being here today.
Always a pleasure, Marilee.
Thank you. Well, he says there's no longer any good reason to put U.S. citizens at risk by continuing to outlaw online poker here, but he adds an important caveat. And today on Eye on Washington, we'll ask my guests about this proposed code of conduct. We'll find out why he says it provides crucially needed confidence and protection Americans want when gambling online. And then we're going to tell you a bit about the American Gaming Association and why it's important to Nevada's top industry. Well, you may have caught the recent Eye on Washington show with Nevada U.S. Congresswoman Shelley Berkley and Caesars Entertainment Vice President Jan Jones, during which we discussed proposed regulations governing internet poker. The proposals covered technology audits, record keeping, how customers enroll, oversight of internal controls by online gaming companies, how to discipline those that violate the rules, among other issues. But the nation's top representatives the nation's top representative of Nevada's top industry now has weighed in with another proposal that its leader says will bring crucial confidence to consumers. It was just a few years ago when the technology and operating processes didn't even exist to implement and enforce a code of conduct like the one proposed by the AGA. But online gambling, it's legal now in about 85 jurisdictions. And my guest says, thankfully, that risk-eliminating technology works. Now, Mr. Fahrenkopf, welcome back to Eye on Washington, first of all. We're going to get into the details of the Code of Conduct in our next segment, but I want to let you give our audience a chance to understand the background. What led to your wanting this code?
The gaming industry is a very unusual industry in that we want tough regulation with law enforcement oversight. That provides the integrity for our business. That's always been our position. Nevada, of course, was the earliest state to have casino gaming. We're the most experienced with regard to regulation. Nations around the world that are considering having casinos always go visit the Nevada Gaming Control Board and Commission because we've sort of set the standard of regulation. Sure. So we just believe that that same standard that applies to our brick and mortar casinos here ought to apply to any online gaming sites were it to become legal here in the United States.
So take us back just a few years. You've been on this show several times in the past, and you were very concerned back then over this lack of proven technology to be able to monitor online poker. So that was your major concern.
Well, we had a position for over 10 years, and the last time I was on the show, I think I stated, I know it by heart. The American Gaming Association opposes all forms of internet gambling because we do not believe the technology exists to properly regulate it with law enforcement oversight. I've said that a million times over a number of years. What's happened is technology developed. We live in a digital world. As you mentioned, we're now in a situation where we have 85 countries around the globe that have legalized online wagering. Now, it used to be that the countries only were what you would call third world nations. There were islands in the Caribbean, maybe Gibraltar, the Isle of Man. We're now in a position where we have first world nations like Great Britain, France, Italy. We have provinces in Canada who have legalized online gaming, and they've done it because the technology has developed where you now know you can regulate it. You can prevent bets from coming from jurisdictions where it's illegal. You can require identification so that the operator is sure that the person is who they say they are, and rather some 14-year-old kid with mom's credit card. You can provide assistance to people who have responsible gaming problems. So the technology has come about, and that has changed the way the brick and mortar industry in Nevada looks at the
Speaking of that 14-year-old, we're going to get again to the code's points in our next segment, but I also remember back then a biggie to you was that we needed measures preventing minors from gambling online, which is in that code of conduct. That was a big sticking point to you as well in years past.
It really was. I mean, we still battle this in Las Vegas, Atlantic City, and Reno today, where some young people don't look like they're underage, but they really are. We fight it all the time, requiring, making sure they're 21. You can imagine online where you're not seeing the person, but that technology has been proven. It's been proven in Europe, and as I say, with first world nations, rather than just some small operations where we have some questions about how good the regulation was.
Now, again, I'll get to the points in a moment, but I did want to say, in case we don't get to it later, because I think it's important for the PR part of this and how you're reaching out to people with this. You've introduced a YouTube video that, kind of makes the case for establishing this code of conduct. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, again, people look at the web for so much, and the net is the way they get information. So it's sort of comical. It kind of compares the wild, wild west of 120 years ago, what it was like.
It. Yep.
Okay, and comparing it to today, it's still the wild, wild west. For those Americans, some 15 million or so, who play online, there's no regulation. There's no one there to protect consumers. There's no taxes being paid. And so we made that comparison so that we can hopefully educate some people on the Hill that now's the time to change.
If I can give an opinion, I actually thought it was very good and fun.
Much.
We are going to come right back to Eye on Washington, and we're going to detail that code of conduct for you. Stay with us.
You're watching Eye on Washington with Marilee Joyce. Brought to you by the National Mining Association, the Freest Companies, Caesars Entertainment, NV Energy, the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority, Western Lithium Corporation, and Skyline Restaurant and Casino.
America's minerals have made us a nation of self-reliant dreamers, shaping our world and the endless ways we enjoy it. But red tape often forces us to import more than half the minerals we depend on. Minerals we already have. We don't import our dreams. Shouldn't that go for our minerals, too? The National Mining Association. Learn more at nma.org.
You already watch Eye on Washington with Marilee Joyce, Nevada's only statewide program produced in Washington, D.C. But for even more news from Capitol Hill that affects you, your family, and your business, you need to read Nevada's Washington Watch, our online newsletter. In-depth reporting on federal efforts that impact you. Our exclusive Inside the Beltway column, putting a microscope on Nevada's congressional delegation. Guest editorials about what Nevada needs from the Hill. Nevada's Washington Watch, your watch on Washington. Subscribe today at nevadaswashingtonwatch.com.
Heads we go, tails we stay. A coin flip. That's how it all began for what is now Nevada's largest transportation provider. Charlie Frias, with a can-do spirit and support of his loving wife Phyllis, bought ABC Union Cab in 1966. They then parlayed 5 cabs into a fleet of nearly 1,000. And today, Frias has over 2,000 employees and was recently voted Las Vegas's best company to work for. Frias, safe, reliable, simply the best.
How will new energy technology make our lives better? Will geothermal, wind, and solar energy be a bigger part of our future? Yes. And soon it will all be in our backyard. Learn more at nvenergy.com.
Welcome back to Eye on Washington, our discussion of a proposed code of conduct that my guest says is needed to give Americans both confidence and protection when betting online. And he is my guest today, Frank Fahrenkopf, the head of the American Gaming Association. Let's look a bit more closely now at that code of conduct that my guest's association calls crucial as officials set about to regulate online poker. The AGA's code of conduct says that companies should conduct extensive background checks aimed at keeping criminals out of the business, provide identification of every U.S. online poker player to assist law enforcement, as well as to keep minors and known cheaters from playing. Companies would undergo regular testing and auditing of online poker software, institute gaming protections on operator sites to educate patrons, as well as to provide problem gamblers an easy access to tools to help control their behavior, and would maintain stringent anti-money laundering procedures that would assist the government in its law enforcement efforts. And Mr. Fahrenkopf, here's a quote from you the day you announced that proposed quote. You said, if online poker is legalized in the U.S., implementation of the principles of the Code of Conduct will ensure that American consumers are playing online poker in a fair and secure environment provided by a responsible operator. And it was really that uncertainty about operators being responsible, honest, regulated that bothered you from the start.
Well, we go back to the word I talked about a little while ago, integrity. The integrity of our business. It's key. We're a cash business. I mean, it's very important to have that integrity. And the success, I mean, we've had legalized casino gaming in Nevada since the early 30s, and we've developed the reputation and regulation. New Jersey then followed as the second jurisdiction, and it was that tough regulation that provides the integrity. Much of what is in the code that you just read is in the Code of Conduct that has been signed by our brick and mortar casinos now, and which is required by the regulatory regimes throughout the United States. So we're just saying, if it becomes legal, the same standard of tough regulatory control to provide integrity must be there. And it's even more important, I think, in the online situation than it is when you're sitting across from a dealer, in Las Vegas, because of the uncertainties of the technology. Sure. But I think that technology has been proven. I know that, for example, that the Nevada Gaming Control Board has had contact with Alderney, which is a very well-regulated jurisdiction connected with Great Britain. And so I think that the regulators are more comfortable now that that technology is there.
You know, I should mention that the code, that code point on assistant to law enforcement, aiming at keeping kids and criminals out of the game, it also calls for companies to keep tabs on consumers from unlawful jurisdictions so they can't play. What are some examples of these jurisdictions?
What would probably happen is this. If, in fact, this Congress passes a bill to legalize online poker, it'll be what we call a state opt-in situation. Those states that want their citizens to be able to play online poker would have to take whatever action is necessary. Some states just require a governor. Some states require a governor and state legislature that would say, all right, the people of our state can play online poker. Other states, I can bet you Utah is not going to agree to have their folks play. So what I mean by that is that's a jurisdiction that anyone in Utah should not be allowed to bet, and they would be blocked out. That's the sort of technology that exists to block out jurisdictions where it's illegal for their citizens to play. And it's been proven, as I've said, in Europe. And the same sort of technology would be used to make sure that minors are not involved.
Interesting. Let's talk also about that anti-money laundering provision. It's another concern you've shared over the years. What exactly do you want companies to do here?
Well, what we've got to be careful of, and it's why we feel the time has come with technology. We know that there's about 15 million Americans every year wagering online. The government of the United States has said for years it's against the law. But it's not against the law for them. In other words, it's legal for you right now, Marilee, to go online and place a wager with one of these offshore websites. What is illegal, if I'm an American company, to provide you that service so that you can bet. So that's what forces Americans to go offshore, because no one legally can provide that service. So here's something that's not illegal for U.S. citizens to do. It is illegal, however, for an operator to provide that service within the United States to you. So we view this as a law enforcement piece of legislation, not only to make sure that those offshore websites, and we know there's over 1,000 of them, that are accepting bets from U.S. citizens. And with the recent indictments and the recent civil cases that have been filed against two companies, Full Tilt and Party Poker, show that these operators offshore are not providing the protection. Allegations were filed by the Justice Department within the last 10 days saying that the operators of Full Tilt, which is one of the most popular offshore websites, were not segregating the betting money, and so they could return it to the bettors, but were putting the money in their own pockets, and went off with $400 million is missing. Now, I'm an old criminal defense lawyer, as you remember, so I don't believe everything that Justice Department's put out, but it shows that the time has come for tough regulatory control, Get the bad guys out of this, and let's regulate, license, control, provide jobs and tax revenue here in the U.S.
And bring that confidence, as you said.
Absolutely.
Since your announcement of the Code of Conduct, how's it been received by your member companies?
It's been received very, very well. And all our member companies are in supportive. There's a new organization called Fair Play USA that is out there. It's a new grassroots organization. They have former FBI Director Louis Freeh, former Home Security head Tom Ridge, saying, look, now is the time. It's important for law enforcement. We should legalize online poker. That you asked about money laundering. That's to make sure that there's in place the system of regulation that prevents people in this business from doing that.
What remains against the legalization of online
Well, you've
poker?
got a strange combination, really. We know, because we poll every year, Peter Hart has done our polling for many, many years, that 80 to 85% of the American people have no problem with gambling for themselves or others. There's a rock-hard 15% that really hasn't moved in the last 15 or 20 years. And these are people who are morally opposed because of their religious beliefs.
Any type of gambling, nothing to do with online, that's right. In other words.
And so you're going to have them opposing. They will oppose. Primarily led by the Methodist and Baptist churches. They will be opposed. And it's interesting, in the Republican Party, it tends to be people who view gaming as a sin and therefore want to prevent people from sinning. In the Democratic Party, it seems to be people who don't think that people are smart enough to make their own decisions, how to spend their own money, and that government must protect them from themselves. So you have the strange marriage of the left and the right in politics that caused the concern in getting this type of legislation passed.
Thanks. And when we return, we're going to have the great marriage between the American Gaming Association and our delegation in their efforts to protect and strengthen Nevada's top industry. That's right after this.
Every day, thousands of people in northern Nevada don't get enough to eat. 1 out of 5 children in northern Nevada go to bed hungry every night. But you can do something about it. Catholic Community Services of Northern Nevada has been providing help and creating hope in our community for more than 65 years. By donating food, time, or money, you can make a difference in a hungry person's life. When you make your generous donation to St. Vincent's Dining Room and St. Vincent's Food Pantry, you're helping to fight the scourge of hunger in northern Nevada. In these tough economic times, now more than ever, we need to help those less fortunate. To find out how you can donate to St. Vincent's Dining Room and St. Vincent's Food Pantry, call, click, or stop by, and together we can end hunger in northern Nevada.
Thanks to an ongoing commitment by America's mining companies, more than 2 million acres already have been reclaimed. To learn more about reclamation or other aspects of mining, visit nma.org, the National Mining Association.
You already watch Eye on Washington with Marilee Joyce, Nevada's only statewide program produced in Washington, D.C. But for even more news from Capitol Hill that affects you, your family, and your business, you need to read Nevada's Washington Watch, our online newsletter. In-depth reporting on federal efforts that impact you. Our exclusive Inside the Beltway column, putting a microscope on Nevada's congressional delegation. Guest editorials about what Nevada needs from the Hill. Nevada's Washington Watch, your watch on Washington. Subscribe today at nevadaswashingtonwatch.com.
Heads we go, tails we stay. A coin flip. That's how it all began for what is now Nevada's largest transportation provider. Charlie Frias, with a can-do spirit and support of his loving wife Phyllis, bought ABC Union Cab in 1966. They then parlayed 5 cabs into a fleet of nearly 1,000. And today, Frias has over 2,000 employees and was recently voted Las Vegas's best company to work for. Frias, safe, reliable, simply the best.
All of us at Caesars Entertainment have something we want to say.
Play responsibly.
Play responsibly. We don't want you to gamble if you've had too much to drink.
You shouldn't gamble if you're lonely or depressed.
And if you're under 21, you're not allowed to play.
No.
No matter which of our casinos you come to, our message is always the same.
Play responsibly.
Play responsibly.
Play responsibly. We know you're coming to our casinos to have a good time, and we always want you to leave feeling like you did.
welcome back with Eye on Washington, our discussion of internet poker and its ideas on how to protect its players. We've been visiting with Frank Fahrenkopf, the head of the American Gaming Association. We're going to spend this segment explaining to you who might like to know why my guest's code of conduct is being taken so seriously in Nevada. Indeed, just what is the American Gaming Association and why is it so important to the state's top industry? Well, the American Gaming Association opened its Washington office in 1995, and in all the years since, it has had as its fundamental goal creating a better understanding of the gaming entertainment industry. It does this by educating members of Congress, other decision makers, the media, and the general public through education and advocacy. The AGA represents the commercial casino industry by addressing federal legislative and regulatory issues affecting its members and their employees and consumers. These include, for example, federal taxation, today's topic of internet gambling, and tourism and travel matters. And I need to make sure and add at least one thing that might not occur to you at first. The AGA, for many years, it's been the leader in the area of responsible gaming. In fact, in 1996, it founded the National Center for Responsible Gaming. That nonprofit arm is devoted to increase awareness of pathological and youth gambling, and since 1998 has held the Responsible Gaming Week every August. It's aimed at increasing awareness of problem gambling among both consumers and industry employees and finding effective ways to treat gambling-related disorders. And have to give some trivia. In all those years, the AGA has had one president. There he is. Mr. Fahrenkopf, I think it was an attempt many years ago to pass that 4% excise tax against gambling that sort of led to people who think gaming's a darn good thing for Nevada and the nation and jobs to say, we need an advocacy group, we need a representative in Washington.
It clearly was the catalyst. And at that time, a number of leaders of the industry, it was actually Chuck Mathewson, who at that time was the head of IGT, Steve Wen, and Raymond Skip Avancino, who was the president of Hilton at that time, Phil Satry, and some others who realized that when the 4% gross proceeds tax was floated, that there could be problem in the future and that it was important for the industry to be represented here in Washington. And that really became the catalyst of the creation of the AGA, and I agreed to sign on for 1 year, get it up and going. And well, that was 16 and a half years ago, so time flies.
And still doing a great job, and thanks for being on this program. You know, one thing we talked about on my show with Congresswoman Berkeley and Jan Jones of Caesars Entertainment was about the Congresswoman's memberships on the Gaming and the Travel and Tourism caucuses. And you know, we really stressed then the need of what they do on those caucuses, as you, of course, know, and just to remind my audience, is to educate members of Congress about the importance of the industry to Nevada. And that's very similar to one of your main functions here, is working not only with our delegation, with New Jersey, with other places where gambling is legal, and helping people who either are maybe averse to the activity, don't understand it, don't know how it creates so many jobs, how many industries are related to gaming. That advocacy is the big part of your job.
This present Congress has over 100 new members. You combine the House and Senate. And the majority of them have no knowledge about the gaming industry, the jobs we produce, etc. So this new Congress, we spent a tremendous amount of time up here on the Hill, not only talking about internet wagering, but talking about the importance of our industry to their communities, you know, jobs, whether or not it's a company that produces chairs like this for our hotel casinos.
Sure.
So that's a very important part of our job.
And in a recession,
very important.
Jobs are it. We are about out of time in this segment. I wanted you to take maybe 30 seconds or so. Maybe just name one of the biggest or most interesting efforts you've fought for or advocated for on behalf of gaming since you've been there.
Well, I don't think there's any question that the creation of the National Center for Responsible Gaming was the number one thing that has driven us and has been so very, very successful. We didn't know back, you know, years ago when we were created how many people can't gamble responsibly and who need help. And we as an industry stepped up to the plate and said we have to do our best to help them. We now know from many studies it's about 1% of the population. Our industry has put millions of dollars into peer-reviewed research and it's been just a tremendous accomplishment, one that I'm tremendously proud of.
My company's Nevada's Watch and Watch newsletter. We've actually interviewed the head of that center, and it's amazing how much they've done for people who are addicted, and it is a good thing. We're going to have our final moments together on Eye on Washington right after this.
All of us at Caesars Entertainment have something we want to say.
Play responsibly.
Play responsibly.
We don't want you to gamble if you've had too much to drink.
You shouldn't gamble if you're lonely or depressed.
And if you're under 21, you're not allowed to play.
No matter which of our casinos you come to, our message is always the same.
Play responsibly.
Play responsibly.
Play responsibly.
We know you're coming to our casinos to have a good time, and we always want you to leave feeling like you did.
America's minerals have made us a nation of self-reliant dreamers, shaping our world and the endless ways we enjoy it. But red tape often forces us to import more than half the minerals we depend on. Minerals we already have. We don't import our dreams. Shouldn't that go for our minerals, too? The National Mining Association. Learn more at nma.org.
You already watch Eye on Washington with Marilee, Joyce, Nevada's only statewide program produced in Washington, D.C. But for even more news from Capitol Hill that affects you, your family, and your business, you need to read Nevada's Washington Watch, our online newsletter. In-depth reporting on federal efforts that impact you. Our exclusive Inside the Beltway column, putting a microscope on Nevada's congressional delegation. Guest editorials about what Nevada needs from the Hill. Nevada's Washington Watch, your watch on Washington. Subscribe today at nevadaswashingtonwatch.com.
Built on a fleet of just 5 cabs bought in 1966 by founder Charlie Frias, Frias Transportation is now Nevada's largest transportation provider. Today, Frias has a fleet of nearly 1,000 vehicles and more than 2,000 employees. As an industry and community leader, Frias continues to create the future of transportation technology and management and actively supports the community, continuing the legacy of quality service in the Las Vegas Valley. Simply the best. Thanks to an ongoing commitment by America's mining companies, more than 2 million acres already have been reclaimed. To learn more about reclamation or other aspects of mining, visit nma.org, the National Mining Association.
And we are back with our closing segment of Eye on Washington. Mr. Fahrenkopf, as we close out today's show, what do you see as the top gaming issues coming in 2012?
The number one issue is to get this economy back up, get people with discretionary income so that they'll come, continue to visit and gamble and see the shows and be involved in the retail that we have. It's a remarkable thing. People are still coming with a very tight budget. The other question is this whole question of, we don't have time now, we can do a separate show, is off-reservation Indian wagering, and that's one that we should talk about.
Sir, I think you've just committed yourself to coming back to Eye on Washington. I know my audience and I hope so, and that does wrap up this week's Eye on Washington. Be sure to join us next time for more federal matters that matter to you in Nevada. For news anytime, check out our website, joycecommunications.com. Thanks for joining us on Eye on Washington. I'm Marilee, Joyce in Washington, D.C. Have a good day.